Hey, it's good to see you. How have you been? Welcome back. And today I wanted to talk about a book that I've been reading. I wanted to get into this book because I always want to improve my understanding and my thinking and my acting skills, as in taking action, not acting on a stage or in a film. And I think it's one of the most important things to do is to be able to analyse the situation, make the best choice possible to go in the direction that you want to also help yourself and other people along the way. There's 3 steps. Number 1 is analysis. Is basically gathering all of the facts available to you at that time to understand whereabouts you're at. Because if you don't have all the information, how can you come to a good conclusion? It's also good to remember and understand the baseline, the normal, the flat line that you can work off. So if you're analysing over a certain amount of time, then you can work off and realise where things are changing, what's different now versus then. And you remember, if you go back to school, go back deep into the memory, into science class, you always had a control. You always had an experiment where you did 1, 2 or 3 things, and there was always a baseline, a control, so you could measure the variables. Once you've observed, you want to understand the basic concepts. It's really important to understand that people see the world differently. As obvious it might sound, people have misconceptions and different understandings or different interpretations of the same words. Look, are we saying the same thing? Does this make sense to both of us? Once we've cleared that, then we can move on to the next thing. And what you'll also do is realise that you maybe have some biases and some differences in understanding from other people and learn a bit more about yourself in the process. You see this a lot at the moment with people that have been heavily brainwashed. They've been drawn into things political, religious, things, scams. People have been brainwashed and they have the narrative. They know the words to say, but they don't know what the words are meaning. They don't have anything to back it up. You know, you'll see people screaming from the top of their chest about something, but then when they get asked one simple question like, what does this word mean? They crumble and then end up fleeing the situation because their whole worldview comes crashing down. So to summarise for section 1, it's important to know the facts, know what the A's, B's and C's are, to know the situation. 2 is to understand that you may have some misinterpretation between yourself and another party. And number 3 is just to keep your head in the game, to realise that without all the information, you're not going to be able to make a good decision. So number 2, the implications. You want to understand the tree of understanding. What we just had there were the roots, the fundamentals, the very beginning. Now we can move on to the implications or the branches. So if we look at the before, the analysis, what happened up to this point, how did we get here? We can use that and the people involved in the situations and the things that went on to understand what could possibly happen next. The implications. So the before and the after, and you're slap bang in the middle, trying to use your prior knowledge and your experience to understand where things are going to go next from what's already happened. So linking it back to science, you have a hypothesis or theory. You need to theorize 3 scenarios that could possibly happen from the current position you're sat, and then from that you can deduce the most likely, and you just have a gut feeling. You have an understanding, you'll be drawn to one of them which feels the most likely. Now you're not always going to be right, but having 3 to pick from that you've come up with the information that you've already learned from is a lot better than just pulling something out of the air and trying to guess. And another implication is listen and talk. What actions that you take are going to have on the environment. As well as predicting the events that may happen within the world, you also need to be able to predict people's reactions to such events. How is a certain demographic, how is a certain person or party going to react in a certain way? It's almost like, relating it back to something everyone knows. I know my mum's going to go mad if she hears about this. Or I know that my teacher's going to kill me if she doesn't get the homework on time, or something like that, just to relate it to something that most people would understand. Is that the implications of your actions and all the situation that is about to develop, and how that can then change the situation down the line and the actions that you'll have to take from there. So to summarise the branches, it's important to understand how the future is going to go. You're never going to know for certain until it does happen because the variables are too massive and too wide. But as I say, being able to lay as many variables out on the table and theorize and pick the best one out of the three, then you're going to be a lot closer to where you want to be. And over time, this becomes a skill. And finally, the leaves. We've gone roots, branches, and the leaves, because you can't have the end without the start. We are looking at the action. The actions you're going to take based on the root, the implications, and then the actions. What are you going to do with that information? And a really important thing to do, like I mentioned in my last video, creation, action, it doesn't need to be perfect. And if it does feel like it needs to be perfect and you never act on it, you might as well not even thought about it in the first place, because without doing anything, these ideas will just remain that, a dream or an idea or a thought. You need to put things into action. There's a well-known sort of analogy of this is, imagine that there's a classroom split down 50-50. Half of the classroom has to make as many clay pots on a turntable, you know that one where they do it in the film. They're throwing, one team's got to throw as many pots as possible in a certain amount of time, and then another group has to make one perfect pot. In this scenario, the people that have to make as many as possible towards the end up making a better quality pot than the person that just threw or had to throw one perfect pot. If you try and get things perfect from the beginning, it's going to basically stall you into indecision and paralysis. Analysis paralysis, you would have heard that before. Put simply, start imperfectly. So finally, if you are confused and you've got a problem that feels too large, then break it down into small chunks. Manageable chunks. Computers don't process the whole problem straight away. They break it down into sections and tick things off as they go, and before you know it, they've done the whole thing. It's almost like you look at your plate of food for dinner. You don't try and eat it all in one go, do you? You break it up into small chunks so you can get it down and digest it as you go. And then also a side note, if you want this to become a positive reinforced habit, you've got to do just that. If you've ever read a book called Atomic Habits, if you haven't, I would highly recommend it, as well as the book that I'm about to reference to you now. It starts off by changing your environment, having an incentive, repetition, and a reward. You have to make it easy enough to do, you have to have it desirable enough to do, and you also have to reward yourself for doing it, or else you won't have the, you just won't do it. So to summarize, starting off from the very bottom, you've got your roots, the start, the information. You need to know everything and clarify and make sure the information you've got is correct. Going to then to the branches is being able to predict from the information you've got how the future will go and how that's going to interact with the people in the situation. Some people might flip, some people might join. You don't know how things are going to act. So it's being able to predict that with three best scenarios and going with your gut feeling. And then finally, boom, boom, at the top of the tree, we've got the leaves, and that is action. Using the information and then working towards where you need to be. But don't let it paralyze you. Don't analyze too much. Make a decision sooner rather than later. And if you've enjoyed the video, stick around for some more. Drop a like, a comment. If you've helped understand something from this video, or you want to learn more, drop a comment, drop a message, drop a subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.